he would tie a rope around their dicks and tie it super, super tight so that when they couldn't pee. Mm-hmm. And he said that every single one of these POWs would squeal like a freaking pig.
Thanks for joining us as we peek behind the curtain of a grunt's life, where we dive deep into the psychology of our #1 show with special guest Lauren Rich, a licensed clinical therapist who has been working with combat veterans for over a decade. Here, we'll discuss the ways in which the military mindset serves to win wars, but isn't as helpful for good mental health post-service. We'll also do a character analysis of Lieutenant Murphy, giving insight into his mindset and kind of psychotic behavior. Kind of. So welcome to the path out of hell, boys and girls.
Moving into one of the biggest topics of Episode 5 is torturing POWs. I'm just gonna let you share.
How much fun it is, or?
Well, how much fun, how frequently?
I mean, there's all kinds of stuff. I like the knife in front of the face. Mm-hmm. One of my buddies, when he was in the same area that I was in, which, by the way, the whole scene's up on top of the berm with the enemy coming at them and everyone getting some firing, and then the close air support coming in. That comes from my buddy Mike Owen, the lieutenant that I served with. He was in
The one in the book that you reference.
Maybe.
Yeah, you do.
I might have.
I promise.
Oh yeah, yeah. Mike Owen he's in Insane Cat. Murphy's kind of based on him. This guy's nuts. Mm-hmm. He's just one of the funniest guys I know, and he's just a character. He had a rough Marine Corps experience in terms of his deployments. He was a combat replacement in 3-5,
Okay.
and then came back, went right back to Afghanistan with 2-4, and my unit replaced 2-4.
Okay.
So he told me that when he was on this patrol base, I think with PB Habib at the northern flat of Musa Kela, he lived with an Afghan army unit, and the Afghan army commander, he had a torture room, and he would tie the guys' penises. He would tie a rope around their dicks and tie it super, super tight so that, for one, they'd turn black and blue and start dying, and then they couldn't pee. Mm-hmm. And he said that every single one of these POWs would squeal like a freaking pig or sing like a canary, whatever is the right analogy, and tell him who all the bad people were, where all the IEDs were, just gave him everything. And it worked like magic, this tying up the pee thing. And so because of that, his unit had the highest IED find rate in the entire battalion. So battalion,
Oh my.
they bring him to the district center in Musa Kela and they say, hey man, we need
How are you doing this?
Yeah, no, they didn't even ask. They just said, we just need you to teach a class to the other officers on how you're finding all these IEDs. So he makes up a bunch of bullshit because the real reason he found the IEDs was the A&A commander was torturing the Taliban.
Wow.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Torture is very effective.
Brilliant.
Very effective.
But we're supposed to be above that.
You would think.
You would think.
But you know what? The reality on the ground is not the reality on television. It's not the reality that the JAG officers have created.
It's very much a double standard that
Yeah.
they get to do that and we don't.
Yeah.
That we're somehow morally better than them.
Yeah.
You know.
But what they're forgetting is that when you're in this environment, you are an animal.
When in Rome.
When in Rome, right?
Yes.
When you're in combat.
Yeah. And I think part of that goes back to the male mentality to compete and out-compete. And so you think you're going to fuck with us, I'm going to show you how sick and fucked up I really am.
Oh, you think you guys are
You think
savage?
you're going to? You just wait. You just wait.
We'll see.
Yes. And so part of that is that mental competition. It's no different than a physical fight. You know, it's no different. The mentality is how do we win, conquer, and most importantly, mentally crush the enemy. That's what we're after.
Give me that bad bitch, right?
I knew he was cool.
Now this is how you do Sammy fucking Sosa.
There you go, 6 7. Damn, Sergeant.
Damn.
Nice ass.
Okay. Okay.
Nice ass, Sergeant.
When they're at batters up for the actual torture of the POW, and the corpsman says,
Hey guys, you don't want me to have to treat him. I'm gonna run out of shit next time you get your legs blown off.
you know, he tries really not to feed into that.
Because there's always the gambit. You know,
Yes.
the way
Yes.
I write anything infantry related is often going to be on the extreme side of the spectrum, the extreme side of savagery and of psychosis and sociopathy and all of the things that I believe make you good at war. And that's what I'm going to write to, and that's what I want to celebrate, because I want us to keep winning wars. And then on the back end, I want people to have the self-awareness to understand the difference in mindset between what is needed to win wars and needed to be happy in a civilian life.
So the question is, how do you turn it off when you come home, right?
I don't know. For active duty guys who are deploying, right? Like you come home, you got, 8 months or a year before you're going to deploy again. It's like, how much of that mindset do you let go? And how much do you maintain?
So it's funny
That's hard.
you say that, because for those who are still on active duty status or those who frequently deploy, like I have an Army program that I work with that they are an explosives team and they go to ASPs around the world, and their entire job is to make sure that we are demilitarizing weapons or that we have current and active munitions to use, right? Okay, so they are frequently deploying. The limit is supposed to be 179 days per federal regulations and law for this Department of Army program. So they will go on what is supposed to be a 3-month deployment to Djibouti or Kuwait or Afghanistan, and they'll end up being there for 6 months, 9 months. If Corona hits, they'll be there for a year. They'll be stuck, which some of them are. But I do not encourage them to do too much trauma processing when you are a frequent redeployer. Because part of being in a war zone is having enough hypervigilance and anxiety, unfortunately, but really enough hypervigilance to stay alive and to see what is dangerous. And so it's a tool. It's a very useful tool while you're over there. We don't necessarily want to take that away. So if you're still active duty and you're just having problems when you're coming home, let's address those problems, but let's save the heavy duty trauma work for when you're completely done with everything.
I agree with that, and I appreciate that, because it's like, some of these things make you good at war.
They
you
do.
Can't let them go, because then everyone dies.
And there's nothing wrong with that. One of the most beneficial research-wise and for those who actively deploy is EMDR, or eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And that's one of those that can hit many birds with one stone, but it can help with present-day life of high anxiety and hypervigilance and not completely wipe out the skill set as a whole so that you can still redeploy. When we move on to the not moving to Kabul and he has to break this news to the Afghani man, how often or frequently did that happen, that we had empty promises when you were there?
I don't remember this happening to my company when I was there.
Okay.
We were only doing real counterinsurgency for the first few months, and then it was just all helo ops to raid.
How long was your deployment?
7 months.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay. God bless the United States Army. I love it when they deploy for 14 or 16 months. What a fucking terrible idea that is. It's horrible.
Yeah.
Absolutely horrible.
No, it was supposed to be an occupying force, which means they need more time to make an impact on the area. But by the end of an army deployment, you hate the area that you're in so much. You hate your leadership so much. You might hate some of the people that you're serving with so much. And you definitely hate the mission and everything so much that you're just not effective.
14 months on your nervous system when you're being mortared constantly every single day, when you can't sleep at night, when you're in a tent and helicopters are in and out all the time, that is not good for your nervous system. Your body and your brain have to have time to shut down and relax. And I always ask my guys in the education class that I used to teach, what is the biggest difference between 19th century warfare and 20th century warfare?
I don't know.
A lot of them say...
We're doing a lot of coin.
A lot of them say high-tech technology, missiles, whatever it may be. But in reality, the biggest and largest, most impactful, at least in my opinion, difference between 19th and 20th century warfare is that in the good old days, we had this gentleman's agreement that we're going to go out to the line, we're going to slaughter each other, and then come dark, we're going to go back to camp, and we're going to sleep, and then we're going to meet at dawn and do it all over again. Okay? But World War II and on, everything has been a 24-hour war. Your brain gets no time to shut down and reboot, and that is mentally and physically exhausting, and it takes a toll on your brain.
Yeah.
It really does. So then you end up being prescribed something like Ambien, to help you sleep, or Seroquel, and some of you end up being addicted to it. Others have had no impact at all, depending on who you are. But those medications are incredibly powerful, very addictive. And so you end up using something like that to help your body shut down and get rest while you're on deployment. And then you come home and you're on it for another decade.
Ugh. That's terrible.
Or you're on it and then the government wants to take it away from you. We're not going to give you a new coping skill. We're just going to take away the one that you're used to.
That we got you hooked on.
Yes, that we got you hooked on.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it's a good medication. I personally don't think that it is a very good medication. But the point is that there's better resolution than medication. Medication is only a Band-Aid. It can take symptoms from a 10 to an 8, but good therapy and work can take it from an 8 to a 4, where it is livable. And so we have to remember that there are major differences in types of warfare and progression of warfare, and the 24-hour war is one of those.
Add to that someone like one of our guys, Dan, who deployed as an EOD tech like 4 times. And he's hyper vigilant.
All the time. Can't turn it off.
Like this for 7 months. And then he comes home and now he's got to be like this in training because he's going back in a couple months. Do that 4 times. And then now he said he left the military like this.
Yes.
And then
Head is on a swivel.
He's just wondering why he feels like he's always on edge. Fingers like this, eyes blown out of his fucking head.
Yes. So that kind of goes back to when the Afghan man stabs Murphy in the shoulder. You know, he's semi-relaxed, he's in his own hooch, they're having this conversation, and then someone who's supposed to be a trustworthy civilian is hurt and upset, and then we get physical. So that will create a lot of hypervigilance. As for the EOD world, I have a couple EOD guys that I have seen and still see, and really the motto in that life is either I got it right or it's not my problem.
Yeah, you get to take a dirt nap.
Yes, when you live in that mentality, it's no wonder that you come back and you're on edge all the time. One of the kickers is that people who live and work in the EOD world, in my opinion, ride here. You and I ride maybe about here.
Yeah.
Okay, so they come home and they have to figure out how to get down to everybody else's level. And then sometimes it gets confused with being depressed, when really this is just where everybody else has been living and they're trying to come down.
Yeah.
Right? Some of my EOD guys report on the 0 to 10 disturbance scale, that high anxiety or hypervigilance scale, living at about a 7.
Wow.
If I'm at home with my family and children, I can be about a 1 or a 2. But if I'm out in public, even coming to see me, I'm still at a 7.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's wild.
So, yes. So it still goes into Murphy's experience, the betrayal that he has already had, and the abandonment from command, and then having to share that negative experience and increasing his own hypervigilance because of the result.
Look, Mohammed, I want to help you. I really do. But my hands are tied here, okay? My hands are tied. And, it's my boss's call.
In the scene when Murphy and Rich are talking to him, Murphy, he's not happy about it. You know, he's got his moment
He feels bad.
compassion. Yeah, he's just like, I'm sorry, man, but my fucking boss is making me do this shit. You know, which is very immature as an officer. I did that. I thought that'd be funny. My boss it's my boss's call. You know, he should never do that, but he does because Murphy's a child.
Do Ken Griffey Jr. Ken Griffey Jr. You know, yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. He has a straight up, like that.
All the guys over here fucking around with the baseball bats. You know, that scene. The reason I included that was because we always joked about torturing prisoners and how much we wanted to do it. And when I say we, I don't know if I was as much a part of that as probably the junior enlisted guys were. But, you know, I knew that it was a thing that so many of us had fantasized about. And, you know, part of what I wanted to do was give them their fantasies.
So let me say this about fantasies, is that there's a big difference between thinking it and doing it.
Yeah.
It is, there's nothing wrong with thinking it.
Yeah.
Okay? When you actually go to do it, that's when we need to be worried. And I've had guys before who've come in and they say, I'm a horrible person, I deserve to be punished. And lo and behold, all they were talking about was thinking about killing another human being or hurting another human being. I had one who was in charge in Iraq, a couple tours. Some Air Force guy came up to him and said, hey, we're confiscating your reefer. It was the only thing they had for medicine, ice, whatever it was. And they said, we have a trailer and we're going to go load it up. So let's go get it. So my guy gets in the truck with this guy and they go around the area. And he told one of his men, he said, I'll be about 45 minutes. Do not come look for me. So they go around to pick up the trailer and get the reefer. And as they start going, he said, I was fully ready to kill this guy. His mission was going to hurt my mission. And this is over keeping stuff cold. But this is a huge deal when you're trying to survive.
Yeah.
And so he says, as we're driving around, we start talking. And lo and behold, he was from the same town where my mom lived. And my mom was in law enforcement, and he knew her. So now this person that I'm about ready to off over a reefer is someone who knows my mother and they've become human. And he said, I couldn't do it, but I was fully prepared to do it until he said where he was from. And he had felt guilty about that for years. He'd not physically done or acted on any of those thoughts, and he felt terribly guilty about that. Even the thought of killing another human being, he felt bad about.
Yeah, he shouldn't.
Yeah, unnecessarily.
Yeah.
We all have those thoughts. And again, in the context of war, they're very legitimate. For what you've been through and what we're trying to accomplish and trying to survive, I completely understand why you would want to off that guy.
I used to have fantasies of killing. The only analogy that I could use here was the way a football player fantasizes about scoring touchdowns. It was the same thing. It was like, it was all I wanted to do. The thought of it made me happy.
That is very common. A lot of you have fantasies about killing the enemy, killing the CO, whoever it may be. That's not abnormal. All that matters is that you don't actually act on it.
Yeah. Well, unless it's the enemy. And then act hard and be proud. Be
Within
proud.
context.
If
Yes.
it's the
Within
enemy.
context. Yeah.
That's one thing is I don't want anyone to feel guilty about killing the enemy.
Yes, let me rephrase.
can't
Rephrase.
shame that.
Then the fantasies were
celebrate that.
maybe about killing civilians.
Sure.
Okay.
Yes. That
yes,
right there.
okay.
Yes,
I should clarify.
Looking back on that, any one of us, whoever had fantasies about killing civilians, we should probably acknowledge that that wasn't healthy and make sure that when we need to look at that acknowledge that as wrong. That that's not a good thing for mental health. Because I mean, I used to fantasize about punching people in the face and getting into fights, and everything was about violence and proving my prowess through violence. And that's such an unhealthy way to exist in the civilian world. And then because what ended up happening was that when I would drink, I finally had the nuts to make my fantasies come true.
Oh no.
And I think that's the same for a lot of guys.
It is.
As soon as you drink, I mean, how many people are blacked out drunk when they kill themselves? I mean, almost every single one of my friends who's done it, they're blacked out drunk when they did it.
Fuck.
You know, Murphy has this moment where he's just like, like he had compassion for this guy 2 minutes ago.
Yeah.
And then the second the guy's dead, he's just like, this is going to get me in trouble.
Is this the same episode where the CEO says interrogative and then he goes into a sentence?
I think so.
Okay. Was that intentional?
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
It just reinforces that the character's completely incompetent.
yeah.
Yeah. Loved that.
Oh, yeah. He was great. So anyway, that was episode 5. And then we did a lot of talking about the reasons why guys come back from combat and live with this immense level of anxiety, right? Where they're operating up to here and knowing that you have to identify that that is unhealthy for you and then find a way to get yourself down to a new civilian baseline. But when you're active duty, you can't come back down too low. Just know that you are always going to prolong a complete processing of your military experience at the end of your time in the military when you know you're going full speed into civilian world. That's episode 5. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Lauren Rich. We'll see you next episode.